Professor Auguste Piccard, the gatekeeper, a physicist, engineer, and scientist at Brussels University. Also an inventor and an explorer, and the first man to ever reach low Earth orbit. A highly intelligent man who was a graduate and a companion of Albert Einstein. So join me now as we take a look into the journey of one of mankind's greatest accomplishments and why it's been hidden.
Professor Piccard, the Belgian scientist, started the serious game of searching for the world's roof, searching for the world's roof, searching for the world's roof.
Once again, Professor Piccard, the Belgian scientist, has ascended to heights never before reached by man to study the stratosphere, that unknown region which surrounds the Earth at a distance of more than 7 miles.
600,000 feet of hydrogen is forced from these cylinders into the balloon.
Accompanied by his assistant, Monsieur Max Cousins, a start was made at dawn from Dubendorf Aerodrome near Zurich. The preparations for the flight began at midnight, but thousands of people had made the journey from Zurich in special trains, whilst a battalion of Swiss troops held down the guy ropes. Professor Piccard himself superintended the arrangements, and then, when all was ready, he clambered inside the gondola which contained a mass of scientific instruments and gave the signal to let go. The balloon rose quickly and eventually climbed to over 10.5 miles above the Earth. Just imagine, whilst we were sweltering in the heat wave, he was nearly frozen to death in 15 degrees centigrade below zero. After being aloft for over 12 hours, he eventually landed near Lake Garda in Italy.
We were on the scene as soon as the Austrian Alpine troops you now see on their way to the glacier to recover the envelope and gondola in which the intrepid professors had made a perfect landing. After their amazing air voyage, just imagine, twice as high as Mount Everest, the biggest mountain in the world. The gondola, only 6'7" in diameter, you'll notice is half black one side and half silver the other. When too warm, the bright side was turned to the sun. When too cold, the black. Dr. Kepler was overjoyed as he handed out each of the many instruments, all in perfect order, and recording highly scientific discoveries of the utmost importance.
And that capsule still sits at the Brussels Air Museum to this day from 1931. This professor was on coins, he was on stamps, he was in Popular Science magazine, and you got to ask yourself, well, why haven't we heard about this guy in history? Well, because he made a statement right here in Popular Science magazine 1931 about the shape of the Earth, what he seen when he went up, and it says, it seemed a flat disc with an upturned edge. And you can go order this August 1931 edition of Popular Science that will show you this, but you will come to find out that it will cost you about $1,195, and that's used. There's a reason why, because the average person is not going to go spend $1,200 on a Popular Science magazine from 1931, at least not the average person. That's why it costs so much. And that is why he's not in the history books. But that's the good side to why he's not in the history books. Here's the bad side to why he's not in the history books. 2 years later, he goes to the Chicago, Illinois World Fair and pretty much becomes a Freemason and teams up as a silent partner to the government and their military. So then Auguste Piccard steps out of the limelight and starts letting the government try to take these balloons up with these capsules on them. And these, as you can see here, these first two fools don't even succeed in the launch. They actually almost get themselves killed.
2 U.S. Army airmen at Rapid City had a narrow escape from death when their 3,700,000 cubic foot balloon burst as they were about to ascend into the stratosphere. Their object was a trip of 15 miles into the upper air death ray zone.
Okay, now, I want you to check this out. The technology hasn't changed at all, only the design of the capsule, the gondola. As you can see here, the very first capsule with the very first man to ever go above the Earth's stratosphere, which is what NASA now calls low Earth orbit. You see, Auguste Piccard was the only one smart enough and brave enough to do it. Then once he went up and found out the Earth was flat and that there was a firmament, then that is when the government started taking over. And their design is just like Auguste Piccard's capsule because he designed that one also. So then the government forms another government agency called NASA. Now check out their capsule. Look familiar? Of course, it's designed a little different, but it's still the same thing. And then here we are in modern times of NASA. Check out this capsule. Identical pretty much, just isn't black and white anymore. And that's because now the capsule has a controlled climate inside it, so you don't need to paint it black and white to turn it back and forwards from the sun for heating and cooling purposes. And with all that being said, here we have the same capsule with a different design, the same technology, people, as we had in 1931, but they hide that technology and that knowledge from you. They've been hiding it from you for years. They want you to think that they just come out with this technology. They didn't come up with anything. They just designed it to look a little bit more comfortable and fancier than it originally was. But the science behind it is still the same.
The trip with 8 passengers and 2 crew members will last up to 12 hours. 12 hours. 12 hours.
Whilst we were sweltering in the heat wave, he was nearly frozen to death in 15 degrees centigrade below zero. After being aloft for over 12 hours, 12 hours, 12 hours...
And they still cannot go any further than they could go in 1931 because there's nowhere to go. Now, even if you don't understand this part of it and you're just illiterate to the subject, you still have to ask yourself, why have you never heard of this man in school? Why were you never taught about this man? You're taught about everybody who's been the first person to do something, but you're not taught about this guy, the very first man who was a professor at a university, a scientist, and an inventor who got NASA and the Navy started with their little capsules, who showed them how to build them. The first man to go up there and execute it himself. You've never heard of this man. He's not in your school books. Anyways, like I said, this was the very first man ever up there. And he told what he saw in Popular Science, 1931. Professor Auguste Piccard.